Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Black eye being encounter results in pregnancy? 6 years ago, I had an unusual experience, which I cannot say was either this or that. My husband and I lived in an apartment at the time. I was asleep in the bedroom and he was out in the living room, most likely sleeping on the sofa. I was startled awake by a very loud knocking at the front door. I was upset because it was about 2 a.m. and thinking it may have been one of my husband's buddies. I heard my husband get up and answer the door. As he did, something very weird occurred. I felt like I was in a waking dream, losing all consciousness of the time and my surroundings. It's difficult to describe, other than I felt like I was in a bubble, but still able to move about. When I walked out of the bedroom, I couldn't locate my husband, but there were two other people standing in the living room by the sliding window. One was very tall and lanky, wearing a dark-hooded cape. The other was short, like the size of a 5-year-old, dressed in a black one-piece suit that covered its head. And yet, I had an unmistakable sense that the smaller one was the person in charge of the duo in the situation. I was scared since I thought these two were up to no good, and I couldn't understand why my husband had let them in, at the same time wondering where he was. I stood still, staring at them, and trying to get a better look at their faces. The short one was turned away and it never showed its face. But the tall one raised its head and stared right back at me. It looked like a young man with sallow skin, but his eyes were solid black. I remember his face was human-like, but that something was just not right. I know there was more, but I simply don't remember any further details. The only thing that I recall is waking up late the next morning, walking out into the kitchen and asking my husband if anyone knocked on the door last night. He said, "Yeah, someone knocked," but when I opened the door, no one was there. He said he looked outside and into the parking lot. He couldn't figure it out, how someone could knock and get away so quickly without being seen or heard. He was sure it wasn't a neighbor. He said he had a sick feeling after it happened. I didn't tell him what had happened to me, though we have discussed it since then. About 2 months later, I discovered that I was pregnant. But that was impossible because I was told before we got married that I could not conceive a child. The doctor looked at my tests and scans from a previous examination and determined that my eggs were not viable, but he again confirmed that I was pregnant. Calculation of the time when I conceived fell within the period in which we had a strange experience with the two unknown beings. The pregnancy went well and I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. But I have wondered if the encounter had something to do with me being able to conceive a child. Am I being paranoid? J.
Black-eyed kids? Why did they come back? I knew it. I fracking knew it. I had an encounter when I was 13, thinking I was okay. But it happened again. My roommate saw it too. It's been 4 or 5 years since my last encounter. I think I'm safe, right? Wrong. I moved last year, and I recently thought, hey, remember those kids a few years ago? Funny, they can't get you now. Wrong. I live on a mountain, about an hour away from the beach, in a well-populated neighborhood with my roommates. 2 chill lesbians and a gay college dude. Super cool people. I think nothing can hurt me now because there are people everywhere. But no, I'm stupid and jinxed myself. I was home 2 days ago, class was cancelled, and the dude of the house was home too taking a nap. I'm in the kitchen watching Netflix and doing homework when there's a knock on the window. Obviously this is weird as hell, but I have weird friends. Maybe one of them is trying to scare me. I brush it off and continue what I was doing. Then it happens again. Then once again. I brush it off because maybe it was the snow if it wasn't my friends. Things like this happen all the time with them. Well, it goes on for like 10 minutes, and now I'm kind of starting to freak out. My friends don't have this much patience. I go to Charlie's room, the guy, and wake him up. I'm not one that's usually riled up, so he's concerned too. We both go to the window. I have my phone out with the camera and 911 within a touch, and Charlie has a bat. We look out the window and no one's there. After a minute we calm down and go and sit in the living room. Chaz's mom is a cop, so he says he'll tell her about it later. We think we're okay, so we chill and watch TV together. 30 minutes later the doorbell rings. I go and open the door. At first I don't see anything. Then down on the bottom of the stairs of the apartment, I see 3 young boys dressed in black hoodies, jeans, and brown or black bangs. At first I didn't move. I was frozen in place. Then Charlie asked who it was and I came to my senses and got a good look at the kids, then slammed the door shut behind me. I started bawling. And I mean sobbing. I don't know what to do. Charlie is freaking out because I don't cry. He ran to the door with the bat we have on the window sill and looked outside. He saw them too. He started freaking out because he didn't know what to do, so he started yelling at them to leave. He said they started smiling. I was crying even more now. He was screaming, and I think the neighbors wanted to call the cops. Now think about this. He didn't know what they were. He thought they were normal kids that had scared me. He didn't see their eyes yet. I start yelling at him to get inside when I hear a bunch of footsteps running up the stairs, and Charlie screams and runs inside. He's telling me he saw their eyes and that they were black, and now we're both freaking out and grabbing kitchen knives. Eventually we calm down and look outside again. No one's there, but we can see a group of kids past the complex with 3 that we think are the BEKs. I told him about the other thing that happened to me, and now we're scared to be in this house. We told the other roommates and they thought we were high or something. Once again no one believes me. Sorry this is all over the place. This happened like 3 days ago, and I've been on edge ever since. Does anyone know why did they come back? Sean.
The Kansas Black-Eyed Babies. Something happened last summer that has left me with many questions and few answers. I was employed at an appliance and furniture rental and sales business in Great Bend, Kansas. One morning a co-worker and I opened the store. When we arrived we noticed that the back door was open, and when we entered the back room all the lights in the store had been turned on. I didn't look like a break-in because the security latch was intact. The security system had been disabled. There was no power indicator on the code box. We immediately called the police and the store manager to report the situation. We were told not to open the store and to remain in the back office until someone arrived. A few minutes later, after hanging up the phone with the store manager, a police officer was knocking on the back door. I left him in and told him what we had found when we arrived. The officer started to walk through the back room and into the showroom when we started to hear a baby cry. I thought that a customer may have somehow entered the store and that they had a baby with them. My co-worker and I followed the officer in the direction of the crying well. I didn't believe what I saw. There were 2 babies lying on a twin-size bed display. The officer told us to stay there while he checked the rest of the store. He had also radioed for another police officer to come to the location. I looked down at the babies who were both tightly wrapped in dark green cloth. Both babies were quiet, very still and looking at me and my co-worker. I was taken aback by their odd eyes. Both babies had large pupils that were black. There were no eyes, and neither of the babies blinked. The police officer was soon back with us. He commented on the baby's eyes as well. In fact, he was totally freaked out, so much so that he looked scared. The store manager soon arrived as well as a senior police officer. We all stood around the bed looking at these strange babies who laid there quietly watching us. The store manager pulled my co-worker and I to the side and told us to go ahead and leave. He was not opening the store until he found out what was going on. We quickly headed toward the back door and left. I wasn't scheduled to work until a couple days later, but I had talked to a few co-workers who said that the atmosphere in the store was very strange. They had been receiving weird telephone calls and that the security system alarm would trip on several times during the day. I got to work a little early for my next scheduled shift. When I arrived, the store manager was sitting in the office, so I asked him what had happened after we had left. He said that 2 young women, who said they were from the municipal court, eventually showed up and took the babies. The senior police officer told him later that he had no idea who the women were, but that he was told by his superior not to impede. He thought they were probably from McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita. He also said that the babies were very quiet and seemed relaxed the entire period that they were there. I stopped working there not long after. Things were just never the same, and it got tougher each day, especially when odd-looking people would come into the store and just walk around. I didn't feel comfortable being there. I read an article not long ago about black-eyed kids and the theories on their existence. Have you heard of similar incidents? I'd appreciate your feedback. Susan.
Let them in. Most people say they can sense when something is about to happen. Something feels off or wrong. Maybe, if that was the case, this never would have occurred. Maybe I wouldn't be typing this story. It was late, but I couldn't sleep. Something in my mind was stuck in the on position and refused to budge. After an hour tossing around under my sheets, I accepted the futility and moved myself into the front room. It had to be about 2 a.m., the television volume on low playing some older sitcom I was barely aware of. I was on the couch, sleepily watching the ceiling fan. I was pretty calm, despite the late hour and my fatigue. It was the knock on my front door that jarred me from my position. I wasn't really suspicious as much as curious. I lived in a relatively well-off neighborhood. I had no reason to be scared. At first. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. I opened the door, leaving the chain lock intact. Nothing. I gave up and returned to my place on the couch. I think this time, I dozed off, putting the knockdown to my restless mind. Really, I had made it up, a figment of my imagination. That is, until it happened again. It was maybe 3 a.m. by the time I opened the door. I was met by something you all know and fear. At the time, I had no idea. All I saw in front of me were two sad, helpless children. "Hello," the first one said. "We're lost. It's so late. Can we please come in? We have to call our parents." He seemed so articulate. So smart for a child. He was dressed in such snappy attire, it didn't once cross my mind something might be wrong. I just didn't notice the eyes. Somehow, my mind skipped right over that detail. The younger one, a girl, stood with her head down. She was dressed down compared to her brother. She wore her dark hair in pigtails, and it was just so long. Something in me was screaming to shut the door, yet I resisted. Two small children alone, with no help. I must help them. It was the only moral and ethical decision. Well, you turned them away. I invited them inside. At first, they seemed surprised. They had been expecting to have the door shut in their face. They couldn't remember the last time it had been so easy. They won't hurt you, I promise. They're just lonely, they have no parents to take care of them. We must help these poor black-eyed children. They're just lost, alone, and afraid. Besides, you see much better with eyes as black as theirs. You would understand if you let them in, too. JJ.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.